cannot invent and pioneer if you cannot accept failure.
We wanted people that were insanely great at what they did.
Nobody was making any money at all. Most people thought the internet was going to be a fad.
All right. Today on the podcast, I have Nick Harris. Nick is someone where we could call ourselves Twitter friends, maybe, or X friends. I don't know what we even call that platform these days, but I just love the content you've been putting out there. And you kind of said a note like, oh, I'd love to do more podcasts. I was like, you're coming on mine. Let's go. So Nick, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for the invite and thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course, man. So first off, like, how do you introduce yourself as far as like from a professional standpoint, what you do? Because I was going through all the stuff you've done and I was like, man, there's a lot of paths we could go down. But how do you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I've done a lot over 31 years. I usually just introduce myself as someone who wants to genuinely help, right? Mm-hmm. Even in a professional setting, that's really what I offer is like, hey, I have a breadth of experience. I'm happy to talk about particulars, right? But I just want to help. So let's just have a conversation, ask some questions, go back and forth. But, you know, history is something like this. We grew up, kind of poor in a small town. I have an older brother who was really into technology. Basically, he was running like a video game rental center out of our shed before there was like a Blockbuster or anything. And so, I was really into technology. I knew computers well. So I did odd jobs and saved up money to buy a computer out of it was like this huge magazine called Computer Shopper back in the day. And I bought and resold the computer and I attached a service contract to it. And I did that a couple of times, all because I just wanted to buy a boat so I could go fishing with my dad rather than like shore fishing. And so I did it. And I bought a boat and a trailer at 13 years old and kept it till I was 18. And then we, moved on and sold it. But that's kind of how it got started for me is I had a goal. I used what was available to me to get it done.
Gotcha. So kind of always started as like a scrappy entrepreneur because I'm always interested in how people started. So the end goal is a boat to go fishing. You graduate at 12. Hey, I got to set those goals high. That's better than what I had. That's amazing. So as we go to your professional career, like how did all this get started, starting to go down this entrepreneurial path?
So, like I said, I started a business when I was real young. And then Walmart came to town. So I went to work there. I worked at the little local computer shop. Moved down to Phoenix when I was 18. Worked for CompUSA at Inside Sales. I landed some of the largest accounts they've ever had. And after hitting my commission cap, I got kind of burnt. And I was like, well, that doesn't seem fair. I'm the one doing this. So left, started a business with my brother. At the time, it's called a VAR, like a value-added reseller. This is before people could buy computer components off the internet or readily available off shelves. Did that. The 2000 .com bubble smashed us because we were overextended. I did some more stints inside of retail, but like at senior leadership positions when I was in my early 20s. Mm-hmm. Got burnt. Started my own services company. Got that acquired 8 years later. My wife got pregnant with our first, and so I was told I had to get a real job, right? So I went back into corporate America, had some stints at some fairly large corporations. Just a lot of great experience throughout my career. I was just lucky. Like I just kept lucking into it, right? Don't have a college degree. I think I graduated high school with like a 2.8 or something. I kind of phoned it in. But I was able to express to people, like, if you want stuff done, I'm the guy. Like I will get shit done. Mm-hmm. It just happens. And so, I did that a couple times, and then I ended up meeting Dylan Ander last March. He hired me to come run split testing and grow it and get us acquired, and that's what we did. And now I'm a partner at a much larger agency called Acadia.
Yeah. So talk about, I mean, that's pretty impressive. So you came in the CEO role, is that correct, at Split Testing? Did he
Yes.
hire you to essentially replace him to run the ship there?
Yeah. He had some other ambitions, some other plans. He's incredibly smart at CRO and really wants to be the face of it.
Mm-hmm.
And running an agency is taxing. It takes a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just made sense. I love services. I've always loved services. So for me, it was fun and frankly kind of easy. And so it worked.
Yeah. So what was it like about you, do you think, that made him want to have you come in and be the CEO? Because like, as someone that runs an agency and then handing the keys to somebody, that those are huge shoes to fill, right?
Sure.
Like, what was it? Because was it the fact that you'd been there, done that, or what got his attention, do you think?
Probably a couple things. One, I ask a lot of very sincere questions because I don't want to commit to something unless I feel very confident about it, right? So I had a very genuine interest in what he was doing and what he wanted it to become. So I think that gave him a certain level of confidence that, hey, this guy actually cares and can execute on what I've been trying to accomplish, right? The other side of that is, outside of the 3 businesses that I built and scaled and sold, I've been on the brand side where we've gone from, the tens of millions to the hundreds of millions twice, right? So like I have this, like I think most agency people should do a stint inside of a big brand to really understand and feel what it's like to navigate politics and red tape and have a lot of patience. It's very valuable, very valuable.
Yeah. No, so he saw that you had done it on the brand side and you had sold other companies. So was he hiring you with that in mind? It's like, this person knows how to sell companies as opposed to just an operator.
The initial conversations, I don't think were around getting acquired. I think it was just about freeing up his time, right, to go do these other things. Acquisition talk came a little later after we had grown the team to a certain amount. We'd grown the business, like 700, 800% or something over the course of like 8 or 9 months. It just seemed like the right move for our team to join a company that had made its way through the messy middle and sort of just leapfrog towards better benefits, more security, stability, those kind of things, rather than just he and I just push through it, right? We knew we could do it. It would just take longer. But kind of felt like for the team's sake, it just made more sense.
Gotcha. I mean, that's pretty impressive. It's like you come in within 9 months, there's 800% growth, and then there's the sell. Like, what were some of the keys in those first 30, 60 days where you could come in and have an impact like that? Because I think a lot of people listening, as they like make leaps to either start their own thing or to go to something, it's like right when you start day one, the clock starts ticking and you're like, how do I have an impact? Because it's like paralysis analysis, right? With all the things you could do. I even struggle with that myself as we look at our quarterly goals. It's like, okay, it's not what you say yes to, it's what you say no to.
You just said it. It's what you say no to. So when I consult any business, or when I came over to join Split Testing, it was really getting extreme clarity on the goals, right? And in this case, it was like, what do the clients care about and what does service delivery look like, right? Once we gained that level of clarity, it became apparent that lots of things didn't need done. There were a couple new things that needed to be added, right? But when you're building a business or when you're going through the motions of a business, you tend to add on more than subtract. That's just behavior. That's just what people do. We've always done it this way, so we keep doing it that way. Okay, but is that the best? I don't know, right? So even now, every quarter, I pull the leaders of my team together and we have a meeting of what can we do less of, what can we stop doing, and what boundaries do we need to shore up, right? Like we do that every 90 days. Sometimes there's changes, sometimes there's not, but it's a very important exercise.
That's cool. Even to like poke on that even more. So that's like the leadership team or executive team. It's a standing meeting and everyone comes to it with like, okay, this is like what we're doing. We need to stop doing. Like give more detail on that. Cause I think that's something everyone, at least I'm guilty of, you focus on like, oh, what you should be doing, want to do more of. And then you look at your plate, you're like, oh crap. Once again, I signed up for way too much. Like give more color on how you have that discipline. Cause that is freaking hard. You know?
Yeah. Okay. So the discipline comes from having a customer-centric mindset, right? So anything we're going to do, new or continue, it has to benefit our customer. Mm-hmm. If it's not a direct benefit to the customer, we try to kill it, right? Mm-hmm. Now there's certain things operationally that you have to do, but even, I could argue that everything's a benefit to the customer, even if you're doing it operationally behind the scenes, mm-hmm. right? It allows you to support the business to help the customer. So it's really like having a very customer-centric mindset. Mm-hmm. And so, going through the motions of, say, a project management system, right? There might be 10 internal steps, but only half of those impact the customer's experience. Yeah. Right. So then we look at the remaining 5 and we just say, well, who's benefiting from these? Mm-hmm. Right. And sometimes there's an internal member who's benefiting. And sometimes it's just like, yeah, I don't know why we're doing that. Nobody knows. We inherited mm-hmm. it, so we do it. Right. So I guess to drill down into it, it's you really got to empathize with your customer's experience and start to look at everything through that lens. That's mm-hmm. how we do it.
Gotcha. So that customer-centric mind, it's like, does this matter? Does it have an impact? Does it like give them a magic moment, or are we just doing it because we're doing it? And I like the idea of having that not as like a one-time meeting, but on a cadence, because like whether you like in developer terms like tech debt, these things start to bloat and add up. And if you don't stay lean, oh man, it can get out of control. No, that's super interesting. So you come in, you're like, all right, what are we doing? What are we not doing? Let me have this customer-centric approach, get it dialed in to maximize value. And then where did the growth come from? Was it existing demand that you were able to capture, or was it like having a go-to-market strategy, or is it like land and expand with clients? Because I think everyone's trying to figure out like how you make a non-linear leap like that, because those are huge wins.
Yeah. So it was a matter of instilling confidence in the service delivery, right? Raising prices because we were not charging enough for what we were doing. And the team that we brought in, it's a premium service. So we started mm-hmm. to price ourselves as a premium service. And, mm-hmm. Coming from a brand, I will tell you that every agency, they're just commoditized, right? Like mm-hmm. there's people that'll charge $100. There's people that'll charge $100,000, right? Mm-hmm. Bigger brands don't typically look at low cost services because they just make assumptions. They say, well, they can't be that good. They can't be mm-hmm. affording the type of talent that we want working on our brand. So mm-hmm. by raising prices, you get to fake it till you make it kind of thing. Right. So that mm-hmm. was part of it. The other part of it was, a lot of it was inbound, but a lot of it was on the sales calls. You could very confidently say you're getting tremendous experience and some of the best in the space. Right. Yeah. So like I brought over very experienced people mm-hmm. into our team, right? Knowing that it's labor cost is going to be painful for a little bit. Mm-hmm. But we'll make it up by delivering stellar service to the type of brands we want to work with. And mm-hmm. then we started getting referrals. Like most of our business today is referral based.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So it's like increasing the pricing, having the team to support it, and then doing quality work and getting referrals. One thing that I think bootstrap companies struggle with is that messy middle part, or that part of growth where you need to have that A+ talent, but it's like if you're not charging that rate yet, how are you funding that? It's like you have to wait for the growth. Do you dip into cash reserves? And how you kind of land that plane? I don't know if money had been raised or if it was all bootstrapped, but like, how do you think about doing that dance with growth, like managing like the reality of the business model?
Sure. So I will tell you how I've done it every time.
Mm-hmm.
Just tell the client. I just tell customers like, hey, I know you got a referral from, Billy, who's paying us $6,500 a month. We don't charge that anymore. Now we charge 15, right? But here's what the difference looks like, right? A+ talent, operational excellence, service delivery is through the roof. Our win rate is way higher than it used to be. All these things, right? We guarantee our service now where we couldn't before, right? Like there's lots of ways you can say it. And, that's just my method because I'm just a very forthright person. It's not for everybody. You could massage that in sales, but really it's something kind of just on the nose. Like we're growing, we're getting better. Our price goes up. Yeah. So I wouldn't I never dipped into cash reserves. I never raised capital. I always did it by just delivering a better service and being very, very blunt and proud about it.
Yeah. It's almost like I struggle with that sometimes on calls, but what I've learned is like you just say the number and the price and then you shut up and you just let it sit there rather than negotiate against yourself, which has been a tough lesson to learn because that awkward silence for some people can be deafening, right?
Yeah, you got to let it hang out there though. You just got to let it sit. You said your price. See what they say.
Yeah. Totally. I mean, did you struggle with, it's like you could say the price, but it's like some people, they just can't afford it because I see a struggle with, you can always get these constant type of clients, but to go up, you need to maybe think differently on how you get business that are at that other tier. It's like, oh, what we did before doesn't work. Did you have to think differently on a go-to-market or customer acquisition strategy because maybe the budget's changed?
Yeah, I think it's more of a who you're dealing with change. So it's like how you talk about it, right? At a certain size of business, you can just be kind of chummy about it. Like, hey, we're going to try, like in our case, right? We're going to try to improve your conversion rate and get you some more revenue, and maybe that'll work, right? And then you talk about some tactics because they're tactically minded. They're smaller businesses. Yeah. As you get to bigger businesses, you've got to talk to them differently. You've got to talk to them about long-term growth, sustainability. You've got to talk to them about upskilling their team. You've got to talk to them about, we want to understand your strategy. We want to be your partner in growth. We want to do XYZ with you and steer clear of tactics. They're talking to you because there's an assumption you know what you're doing. Don't go into the weeds. They don't want that. They want long-term, smart people that they can invest in because on their side, it's a lot of resources to spin up, to offboard their current agency, to onboard a new one, to get through all their red tape, to get budget approval, to get financing, to put you in the budget for next year. Like there's so much more work they have to do in considering you. Like you just have to talk to them at their stage of business, which is very different as you get bigger and bigger.
Yeah, it's much more strategic and bigger picture. That's a great call out. So you come in, you're tasked with like being the captain. It's like you're figuring out what to do in the spirit of the customer, what not to do in the spirit of the customer, raising prices, bringing in an A team. You have all this momentum. And then at what point does this acquisition start to become something that becomes very, very real? Was this just kind of serendipity falling into your guys' lap?
No, we put ourselves out there a little bit. Maybe 9-10 months later, we started to sort of shop ourselves around.
Nice. And did you have to use a broker, or was it kind of just you maybe knew some potential like strategic acquirers?
We had a lot of interested parties. We ended up going with somebody who found us through a brokerage.
Nice.
Yeah, but initially it was just exercising networks. My network, Dylan's network. We just happened to know a lot of people.
Yeah. That's cool. And what do you think was so appetizing for the strategic partner? I know that like CROs kind of like a high demand service offering. Is it like the category and the fact that you guys are kind of like best in class there? Like for people that have agencies are like, oh wow, I want to build something to sell. Like if you kind of look back, you're like, oh, this is what was good, or oh, I wish we would have done that differently. Like anything leading up to a sell that you're kind of reflecting on.
Well, in our case, CRO is at its best when it works in harmony with other services, right? Because CRO is sort of the tide that lifts all ships, right? When done well and in concert with other things. So I think for our case, it was great timing, right? And we had this growth trajectory that was just stellar, right? For other businesses, though, if I was to advise anybody on, what to do next, where to expand next, I would probably go where their customers are most likely to add on, right? So like, I wouldn't say introduce something because it's easy or familiar or popular, right? Like CRO right now is super trendy. But that's because of paid inflation and all these other things. So people are starting to look at other ways to maximize their revenue, right? I still think there's plenty of opportunity for other services and other products to be brought in that are not necessarily CRO, because CRO done poorly, it's a super hard sell, right? It's all statistics. So if you're not really buttoned up, it's kind of hard to believe the results often, right?
Yeah.
So I would caution and advise founders, owners, operators to just ask their customers, like, hey, we're looking to grow. We appreciate you being with us. What's something we could bring that would be helpful, right? Ask them all. You'll get enough answers that are similar that you'll kind of know where to invest next. And it might not be anything. They might just say, I would prefer you just double down and keep doing a good job on what you're doing. And that is also a great answer to hear.
Yeah. Right. It's like, it's going great. Keep it up. Yeah. That's so cool. I love the customer centric approach on all of it. So I want to rewind a little bit. You mentioned growing brands to like 8-9 figures. I'd love to hear that story as far as like what you're referring to exactly before split testing.
Okay. Yeah. I'm not going to say the names, but it was just, I've been an entrepreneur for such a long time. And when you get into bigger brands and you have an entrepreneurial mindset and like a sort of I don't like no is not a great answer for me. It is now, but at the time I was trying to make a name for myself, right? Big businesses, especially businesses that are making money, right? They do a very, very poor job at identifying opportunity. They tend to just stick with what's working and amplify it through dollars, which is fine, right? But in both of the cases that I went to, one was their marketing at large was just subpar, right? Like they were doing things because you're supposed to do them, like paid. They were doing paid because you're supposed to, but they were getting like, a 1.5 ROAS, right? Well, me being the hot shit I was, I put together a deck, presented to the president, and said, I'll get this to 800% in 4 months. Did it, right? Actually ended up at 1,200% return on ad spend, and we're spending like $300,000 or $400,000 a month, right? Like, so these are big numbers. And then doing that, there's like, it opens up all this other opportunity for you to sort of stretch and test and try things out. So, and in the other case, it was similar. I went in there and, they were top notch at media buying. I couldn't help. But where I could help was conversion rates along the funnel, right? Let's optimize these funnels. You guys are great at acquiring customers, but we're not that great at upselling and cross-selling and improving LTV, right? So let me break down these funnels and improve them. In both of those cases, I had teams of like, 30 to 60 people. maybe 70 people. So it was a lot of, it was really looking at what we're not doing or not doing well, rather than trying to just jump on the ship and keep doing what we are or manage what we're doing. That doesn't, most big brands, they just kind of, they get used to what works and they stick with it, right? And then they find growth through raising prices or introducing new products or something. But they're not great at expanding marketing channels and acquisition.
How do you think differently on like, because it is so easy. Like, you and I were even talking before, like people want the cheat code, people want the shortcut. I want the cheat code and the shortcut, right? I'll throw myself in there. But, and it's easy to be like, there's so many kind of copy brands. Like, okay, you know, Dollar Shave Club did this. I'm going to follow that path. Viral video, then do ads. It works out great. But the problem is when everybody copies, like customers just get immune to it. How do you like kind of have like your own first principle approach to growth? Because you brought up a good point. You're like, oh, they're doing it because that's what you do. But like, how do you come in and have the discipline to have original thoughts that are true to the brand or true to the customer and what they need? Like any advice on how to approach that? Because I think we all get stuck and be like, oh, it worked well for that brand. Let me try it for me. And maybe that's the lazy way and we're just being lazy. I don't know.
I don't think it's lazy. I think sometimes it's hard to have original thoughts or inspiration, right? And I'm not going to claim that my way is the best way or even a good way. But I am a tireless learner. Like I will read. I just read a tremendous amount. I just assimilate information. I'm very fortunate in that way, right? So that's part of it. Is I just have a big advantage because I take in a lot of information every day. So I'd say that's just one thing I'm lucky to have. But when I go into a brand, I don't think that helps me that much initially. What helps me when I go into a brand is it goes back to customer centricity, man. I pull out this big, huge, long empathy map and I go around internally and I interview all the different heads of departments or people in departments, right? And I'm like, hey, you know, you manage this piece of our company, right? How do you think this is for our customers, right? And then I've got all these different points I go through from pre-sale to post-sale to customer support, right? All these things. And I really kind of 1 to 10 everything. And if you do that enough with enough people inside the company, and then you reach out to some customers and you're able to validate it or get close to validating the numbers that you got internally, right? Usually they're a lot lower when you talk to customers. You have specific areas to focus on, right? Like in a lot of the cases, like the brand where I mentioned, like the marketing department was just not great, right? And I took the return on ad spend through the roof. I'm not kidding you. It was 2 customers I talked to, and I simply asked them, why did you buy from us? That's all I asked. Why?
Yeah.
And in their answers, I got entirely new ad copy, entirely new landing page copy, because not a single ad we were running talked to the reason that people were buying from us.
Yeah.
It was that simple. It really was. It was no secret. I just talked to 2 customers, validated it with a bunch of other data, and then we started running ads that talked to the value that people were creating themselves on our behalf, basically talking themselves into buying our products. So when we made this simple change, it just went through the roof. That's why I knew I could put that number in front of the president, right? Like I knew it worked.
Yeah. Isn't it funny? Like more stuff I read of like really good thing. I think Paul Graham just did a post that we were talking about on like how to do great work. And it talks about not leading with the answer, but leading with the right question. And that's another thing is you're kind of talking about being customer centric. That means like listening rather than talking, right? And asking questions. So like as people, they're going to a new job, they're talking to their new coworkers or their new staff, or they're talking to customers. This might be a dumb question, but like, how do you listen well and extract out like the essence of it, right? Because I think that's a superpower if you become really good at that. Because you're saying all I needed them to do is answer this one question. That gave me the ad copy, the landing page copy. Like, add more color on that if you don't mind.
Sure. Not a dumb question. It's a great question. It's an important question.
All right, good.
People get wrong all the time.
Yeah.
So there's usually like there's a couple types of people, right? There's people who are listening to listen, and then there's people who are waiting to speak.
Oh yeah.
Right. So to actively listen is hard, and it does take practice. But when I'm talking to like a customer, I limit every distraction. When I'm talking to people inside of a company, and I go to their desk when we were in office, I would ask them to turn away from their monitor, turn it off. Can we go sit over here? Right? Because I don't want them seeing a ding, seeing an email, reading a chat. Like, I'm trying to actually get information from you, and I want you to hear the information I have. So part of it is like going into it with real sincerity to learn and to listen to what you're trying to get out of the conversation, right? And so in this case, have clear goals and share the goal with the person, right? Like, hey, Jim, I'm trying to have a really good podcast here. What could I do to make sure this is a good podcast for your audience? And then I need to shut up and listen.
Yeah.
Right? Don't pay attention to anything else. Just listen. So it's like, it sounds basic. It's practice. It takes a lot of practice.
Yeah, I think that's something that can be applied to so many different phases of a business. If you're trying to be a good leader, to motivate and inspire, like, do that with your employees or your team, do that with customers. No, man, it's so funny. Like, it sounds so simple. It's like just come in and be curious and ask questions, but it's transformative because not everyone, but you kind of want to be the rainmaker sometimes. You want to be the person that comes in and has the mic drop moment where it's like, and that's how you do it. And you walk out to the standing ovation, but it's like, it doesn't work like that, right? Or at least not for me.
It can. It's just not in the timing that most people want, right?
Yes.
Along with
Yeah.
a really great listener, you've got to have a lot of patience. Mm-hmm. Patience with yourself, patience with others. Like, what I mean is this: if I'm in a meeting or I asked a customer for their time and they're giving it to me, right? You have to understand that 90% of that time is going to be kind of fluff. Mm-hmm. Right? It's going to be feelings. It's going to be them sharing whatever they feel like sharing because you offered your time and they're taking advantage of it. Everybody likes to be heard, right?
Yeah.
So you have to have the patience to get through that and pay attention because they'll pick up on it if you start to stray. Mm-hmm. Then in the last 10%, you can summarize it all and be the brilliant guy in the room. And they're like, oh man, he picked up on everything everybody said. That was incredible.
That's true. If you look at your best conversation, sometimes it's to the person that listened the best, not spoke the best, right? Because you feel heard and valued. That's very cool.
It's also how you build a lot of trust.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, which is everything if you're trying to be a leader and run a business. Because if you don't have that, then geez, good luck. I'm interested. So it's like, you've had these awesome like wins and success stories. You've then gone to split testing, grown it. We're part of acquisition. Now at Acadia, you're a partner, and I assume, much bigger service provider, probably roll up of some other agencies. Like, talk about life now as far as like the role there versus split testing and like the hats you wear versus like where you're super. Anyway, we'll start there, but I'm interested to see how that transition has been.
Transition has been pretty easy. We're still kind of operating independently, so I don't have a ton to add there right now because part of the acquisition was there's going to be this sort of year-long. Let's just keep doing what we're doing, keep growing how we're growing, and then we'll integrate some things operationally and financially. But for the most part, our service is still operating like I'm like a de facto CEO of our team still, being a partner at Acadia. Next year, I think that'll change.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess that's kind of nice for the transition. What has changed as far as like with split testing, like post acquisition? It's like, okay, we need to go even more aggressive to hit certain goals, or is it, hey, we have a little bit more security, or there's a little bit now that we have this parent company. Um, Anything that's changed there with like what you're looking at for the future of it?
Yeah, the goals are higher because we want to be a good contributor to the larger company, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, there's 6 other service lines. Um, so, we've got a lot of internal training to do. We've got to make, we've got to, we've got to help other business units understand that CRO is incredibly beneficial to their customers. But we want to be cognizant that it doesn't come off as just like a lazy upsell or cross sell, right? Like
Yeah.
we want to really bring value. So we've spent a lot of time now um, building case studies, partnering with the business units, partnering with our sales team, and educating on CRO because I've been doing CRO. I did my first split test in 1998.
Mm-hmm.
Brittany, who's our VP of client strategy, has been doing it for maybe 16, 17 years. So we have, for us, it's like innate and normal. And sometimes we're just like, how does not every business do this?
Yeah.
And so we have to rewind the clock and really start to understand how to rebuild and share the value and the benefit. But again, not to come off like a money grab. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Right. And like what hat are you wearing the most right now? Is it like sales hat? Is it like training, hiring? Is it operations? Like where's most of your time going?
It's sales is a big chunk of it right now.
Mm-hmm.
Then the other part of it is, helping manage the team. So that could be, client management, client communications, executive sponsor for some of our clients that need it,
Mm-hmm.
coaching and training with the team a little bit. I'm very fortunate that I've got some very strong people on our team, so I don't have to do a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I jump in when they need me.
Yeah. Very cool. Um, and like last thing on CRO, for people that don't understand CRO split testing, like how do you even begin to educate them and like the value of it? Because sometimes it's hard until they really see it. But like, what's one way you kind of get people's attention with it and the value of it?
Yeah, so let me try to think of how I do my sales pitches. So my sales pitches are all Q&As, right? Like I don't pull up a deck, I don't pitch anything. I just say, let me learn about your business. I'll help you learn about our service, and then we'll see if there's a thing here, right?
Yeah,
I do it very like relatable because I don't want to get into business with people that I don't think will work well with or that understand the service.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
So like earlier today, the way that I explained it was it's a very big brand I was talking to, but in their case, I'm like, listen, you're not running any tests, right? So you guys have been fortunate that you are growing, and that's great. But there are so many unknowns, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of talked to them about one of their top end products, and I said, why don't you tell? It's a CMO. I'm like, why don't you tell me about your product, right? And it was all feature based. And so I just asked. I said, okay. I said, I definitely understand the product now, but what do I get out of it as a customer?
Mm-hmm.
And you could just see that just that slight tweak in mindset was enough for him to say, oh shit, yeah, we're not talking about it that way at all. I said, no, you're not. I said, you're in a great space for a product that is needed, and people are identifying you as a solution because it's something that is needed. Right?
Yeah.
I said, but it's littered with competition.
Mm-hmm.
I said, so really it comes down to price. And you just told me you've been lowering your price. I'm like, why don't we talk about value? Why don't we talk about post-purchase life? Why don't we talk about all the great things this does for people that they're having to build in themselves to pull the trigger, or they just go with you because it's the best price, right?
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like that. Like I approach CRO in a very, you don't know what you don't know, and so we're going to test and determine that and figure it out for you.
Yeah. The unknown unknowns. That's a really cool frame. Nice, man. Well, one question I always like to ask, I'm always interested to hear the answer is, as you look at your career, we can even go all the way back to, hustling for the boat to now, like what's the nicest thing anyone's done for you in your professional career?
I have two that have done the same thing. Can I use that?
Oh, nice.
All right. So they both took a shot. And what I mean is this. I was 32. I got hired away from my own company by a Fortune 500 company. They might have been bigger. That's why I hesitated. And my boss, at some point, I don't know if I wrote an email. I don't know if I was just annoying him or what. At like 9 o'clock on a Monday, told me I was headed to Coral Gables, Florida, to our headquarters to pitch to Sprint for a service contract, right?
Yeah.
And keep in mind, I was in IT.
Yeah.
I had zero right being there. But it came out from the CEO who I was in the boardroom with, and meeting at the time the owner of SoftBank and all this, who owned Sprint. He's like, yeah, Gene says you're like the smartest person he's ever met. And you came in and you've saved us, $22 million in cutting costs and IT and this and that. And he thought you just might be smart enough to help us put together a deck and pitch this thing. Well, him doing that gave me access to all of these very tenured, experienced, leaders. And they all, by way of that introduction, really helped me grow a lot. So like at early 30s, huge brand, very mature company. I ended up lucking out and getting access to asking as many dumb questions as I could and them helping me and guiding me. Right. Yeah. So that was one thing. And then at that company I told you about with the defunct marketing team, one of the VPs, who was not my boss at the time, was like, let's just give him a shot. I'll own it. If he screws up, you can fire me.
Wow. Yeah.
And he became he's now he's a very, very close friend of mine. And it just worked out, right? He had my back. He helped me. He supported me. But, absent him taking a shot, I would have never got that chance or that experience, and I wouldn't have built an awesome team, and they wouldn't be with me here now.
Yeah.
So both times there were people sticking their neck out for me.
Right. And it's like, what's the more downside than upside for them?
They had no reason to do it.
Right. Yeah. Those are really cool stories, man. It's and like those little things are just like jumping off points to the next thing for like someone's career trajectory. So that's super cool, man.
Yeah, it felt special. It meant a lot. It still means a lot. Obviously,
yeah.
I mean, they're the things I remembered out of being working for so long.
Right. Yeah. And well, especially at those phases of your career, because those things are huge unlocks. Those are everything. That's exciting, man. Well, cool. Well, as far as like closing out, like where should we point people if they want to like follow you or the content you put out there? I already kind of mentioned Twitter where people should go, and we could throw that. I'll put it in the show notes. But where can people, get in contact with you or follow you?
That's it. Just the x.com, Twitter. That's it. Nowhere else. I don't have any other social media. I mean, I do, but I don't do anything with them.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, Nick, this was awesome, man. I feel like I learned a bunch from this, but this is super fun to talk and kind of compare notes. So really appreciate it, man.
I appreciate you having me. It was a blast.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, Nick.